The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was enormous. It stretched so far that Unipart could barely see the other end. Floating platforms held representatives from 12 alien species, each one older and more powerful than humanity could ever hope to be. Lights of every color danced across the ceiling, and the air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. Una stood alone on the human platform. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her face showed no fear. But inside, her heart was beating fast. She had practiced her speech 100 times. Today, she would ask the Council to let humanity expand into the Outer Rim. New colonies meant new hope for Earth's growing population, the Veleth. Ice Speaker floated forward on his platform. He was tall, almost 3 meters, and his body was made of living crystal. Light passed through him and scattered into rainbows. His voice was cold and beautiful, like wind through ice. "The Council has considered humanity's request," the High Speaker said. "We have reached a decision." Una held her breath. Humanity is young, dangerous, unpredictable. The High Speaker's crystal body pulsed with dark light. "You spread too quickly. You fight too easily. The Council cannot allow this to continue." Murmurs rose from the other platforms. Una saw the Korath representative lower his head in shame. The Thalans looked away. Both species had once been proud and free. Now they were servants, broken by treaties that promised protection but delivered chains. "We offer humanity a choice," the High Speaker continued. "Surrender your military fleet. Dismantle your defense stations. Accept our protection. In return, you will have peace. True peace, guaranteed by the Council itself." Una's hands tightened into fists at her sides. She knew what this meant. She had studied history. Every species that accepted protection lost everything. Their culture, their freedom, their future. "And if we refuse?" she asked. Her voice was steady. The High Speaker's laugh was like breaking glass. "Then you will learn why no species refuses the Council." Far away on the bridge of the battleship Resolve, Admiral Tae Kong watched the broadcast. His face was hard as stone. Gray hair cut short, scars on his hands from decades of service, eyes that had seen too much death. He stood perfectly still as the High Speaker delivered his ultimatum. "Sir," his aide said quietly. "What do we do?" Tae Kong said nothing. He was thinking of his daughter Jisoo, who lived on the colony world of New Busan. He was thinking of his wife Mireille, who taught school there. He was thinking of his old mother, who had moved to New Busan to be close to her grandchildren. "We wait," he finally said. "We wait and see what our president decides." On Earth, President Woojin Lee sat in his office and stared at the wall. He was a small man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He had been a teacher before he entered politics. He believed in peace, in talking, finding solutions without violence. But now, violence was being forced upon him. His advisors filled the room, all of them talking at once. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to run. The noise was overwhelming. "Enough," Woojin said softly. Everyone stopped talking. "Leave me. I need to think." When he was alone, he walked to his window and looked out at the city. Seoul had changed so much since his childhood. Towers of glass and steel reached toward the sky. Flying cars moved between them like silver fish. Children played in parks below, laughing, innocent. Aware that their future hung by a thread, he made his decision. 3 days later, Woojin announced a modified treaty. Partial disarmament. Some fleet reduction. Limited council oversight. It was a compromise, a way to buy time without complete surrender. The Veleth accepted. They smiled their cold smiles and said they looked forward to peaceful cooperation. On New Busan, Captain Hannah Yoon received her orders. She was young for her rank, only 32, with sharp features and sharper instincts. She had grown up on a farming colony and joined the military to see the stars. Now she commanded the planetary defense grid, responsible for protecting 2 million people. The orders told her to stand down. Power down the defense satellites. Disable the shield generators. Prepare for the arrival of Veleth observers. Not obeyed. She was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. But something felt wrong. The Velith ships entering orbit were not diplomatic vessels. They were warships, barely disguised. Their weapons systems were active. She contacted her superior officer. "Sir, the Velith ships don't match diplomatic configurations. They're armed for combat," Static answered her. The communication relay had been disabled. Hannah ran to the observation deck and looked up at the sky. The Velith ships were descending through the clouds now, dozens of them, their crystal holes catching the sunlight. They were beautiful and terrible. The first bomb fell at noon. It struck the capital city without warning. A flash of white light, brighter than the sun. Then a sound like the world breaking. Buildings turned to dust. People vanished in an instant. The shockwave spread outward, flattening everything in its path. Hannah was thrown to the ground. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed red. Through the chaos, she heard people screaming, crying, dying. She pulled herself up and ran to the emergency command center. Her training took over. She had to save who she could. "All civilian transports, begin evacuation procedures," she shouted into her communicator. "All defense personnel, get people to the cargo ships. Move, move, move." More bombs fell. The sky turned black with smoke. The ground shook without stopping. Velith ground troops began landing, their crystal bodies glowing with deadly energy. Hannah fought to reach the spaceport. She directed traffic, carried wounded children, shot down enemy soldiers who got too close. She did not cry. She did not stop. There would be time for tears later. She managed to fill 12 cargo ships with survivors. 12,000 people out of 2 million. The ships launched just as the planetary shields collapsed completely. From orbit, she looked down at New Busan, burning. Cities that had taken decades to build were gone in hours. Farms, schools, hospitals, homes all destroyed. All those people, all those lives erased. The last transmission from the surface was a child's voice, calling for her mother, then silence, in the command center of the Velith fleet. Commander Torak watched the destruction with satisfaction. His crystal body hummed with pleasure. This was how you dealt with inferior species. This was how you maintained order. He opened a channel to all human colonies. "People of Earth," he said, "this is the price of hesitation. Accept complete disarmament immediately. Surrender without condition. Or watch more of your worlds burn." The message played on every human frequency, on every screen, on every speaker. Billions of people heard it. Billions of people saw the images of New Busan in flames. Among them was Admiral Tay. Kang, his daughter, had lived on New Busan. His wife had lived on New Bus, and his mother had lived on New Busan. He stood on the bridge of the Resolve and listened to Torak's message play on loop. His officers watched him, waiting for orders, waiting for words. He gave them nothing. Inside, something had changed. The man who believed in rules and honor and proper procedure was gone. In his place stood something colder, something that would not rest until the galaxy understood what humanity could become when pushed too far. The war had not yet begun, but it was coming. The cargo ships flew through space in silence. Inside them, 12,000 survivors huddled together in the darkness. Some were wounded, some were in shock. Many were children who had been separated from their parents forever. Captain Hannah Yoon stood at the front of the lead ship. Her uniform was torn and covered in blood and dust. Her hands would not stop shaking. She had not slept in 2 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the bombs falling. She heard the screaming. She smelled the burning. A little boy tugged at her sleeve. He was maybe 6 years old, with round cheeks and frightened eyes. "Where is my mommy?" he asked. Hannah knelt down to his level. She wanted to tell him the truth. She wanted to tell him that his mother was probably dead, that millions of mothers were dead, that nothing would ever be the same. But she could not say those words to a child. "We're going somewhere safe," she said instead. "I'll take care of you until we find her." The boy nodded and held her hand. Hannah squeezed back, making a promise she might never be able to keep. On the Resolve, Admiral Tae Kong had not moved from the bridge in 18 hours. His officers brought him water. He did not drink. They brought him food. He did not eat. He simply stood there, staring at the screen that showed the burning ruins of New Busan. The casualty reports kept coming in. 2 million confirmed dead. The number kept growing. Every few minutes, the computer updated the count, adding more names to the list of the lost. Tae. Kong scrolled through the names until he found them. Kong Jisoo, age 34, status, deceased. Kong Murray, age 62, status, deceased. Kong Soon-ye, age 89, status, deceased. His daughter, his wife, his mother. 3 names among millions. 3 lives that meant everything to him, reduced to lines of text on a screen. His aide approached carefully. Admiral, the President is requesting a call.
Ow.
Tae Kong nodded slowly. The screen changed to show President Woojin Lee. The President looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 days. His eyes were red. His voice was hoarse. Tae Kong, he said. I need to know what you're thinking. I'm thinking about my family, sir. I'm thinking about 2 million people who trusted us to protect them. I'm thinking about how the Velith laughed while they burned our children. The council has called an emergency session. Ambassador Park is demanding justice. Tae Kong's laugh was bitter. Justice. From the council? They'll find a way to blame us, sir. They always do. He was right. At the council headquarters, Una Park stood before the 12 representatives. Her voice was raw from shouting. Her eyes were burning with fury. She had spent hours presenting evidence of the massacre, images of the destruction, recordings of the attack, testimonies from survivors. The Velith High Speaker listened to everything with a patient smile. This is a tragedy, he said when she finished, but we must consider all perspectives. Humanity delayed the treaty implementation. Humanity showed signs of resistance. The Velith acted to ensure peace and stability. Una could not believe what she was hearing. They murdered 2 million civilians. Children. Babies. How is that ensuring peace? The High Speaker shrugged, his crystal body catching the light. Sometimes difficult actions are necessary. The Council must consider the greater good. A vote was called. 7 of the 12 species voted to accept the Velith explanation. For abstained, only 1 voted in humanity's favor. Una felt something die inside her. She had believed in diplomacy. She had believed that words could solve problems, that reason would win, that the galaxy had laws and justice. Now she knew the truth. There was no justice. There were only the strong and the weak. She returned to her quarters and sent a single message to Earth. They have abandoned us. We are alone. President Woojin Lee received the message in his office. He read it 3 times. Then he walked to the United Nations Assembly, where representatives from every nation on Earth waited in stunned silence. He stepped up to the podium. Cameras broadcast his image to every corner of human space. Billions watched. Billions waited. My fellow humans, he began. His voice was quiet, but every word carried the weight of a civilization at the breaking point. 2 days ago, the Velith Dominion attacked our colony on New Busan. They killed 2 million of our people. Men, women, children slaughtered, without mercy, without warning, without cause. He paused. The silence was heavy. We asked the Galactic Council for justice. They gave us excuses. They blamed us for our own massacre. They sided with our murderers and called it peace. His hands gripped the podium. His gentle eyes had turned to steel. I have spent my life believing in peace. I still believe in peace. But I have learned something today. Peace is not something that is given. Peace is something that must be earned. And sometimes it must be taken. He looked directly into the camera. They demanded peace. We offered our hand. They took our children instead. So be it. Let the galaxy learn what humanity becomes when mercy is answered with murder. Let them see what happens when they push us too far. He straightened his shoulders. I am activating the rearmament protocols. Every shipyard will build warships. Every factory will produce weapons. Every research station will develop new technology. We will not beg. We will not submit. We will fight across human space. People watched their president's speech. Workers stopped their machines. Soldiers stood at attention. Parents held their children close. Something was changing. Something was awakening at the Titan Research Facility. Hidden in the moons of Saturn, Lieutenant Minho Beek watched the speech with his team. He was young, only 28, with messy hair and tired eyes. He had been working on a classified project for 3 years, a weapon. Something terrible. He had hoped it would never be used. Now he walked to his terminal and unlocked the project files. The Void Lance. A weapon capable of destabilizing planetary cores? A planet killer. His hands trembled as he typed the authorization codes. "Sir?" One of his colleagues asked. "Are we really doing this?" Minho thought about New Busan. He thought about the 2 million dead. He thought about the little children who would never grow up. The parents who would never see their kids again. The dreams that had been turned to ash. "Yes," he said. "We're doing this." Begin mass production. The machine started humming. The first Void Lance would be ready in 3 months. On the Resolve, Admiral Taekong finally moved from his position. He walked to the tactical display and began marking targets. Velith supply stations, patrol routes, military bases, colony worlds. His officers gathered around him, waiting. "We don't stop until they understand," he said. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "We don't stop until the entire galaxy understands what it means to hurt us. Prepare the fleet. Call back every ship. Cancel all. Leave." "Sir," his aide asked carefully, "what are we preparing for?" Taekong looked at the map. 200 Velith systems, 14 core worlds, 1 homeworld, all of them marked in red. "War," he said simply. "A war they will never forget." In her quarters on the refugee ship, Hannah Yoon held the little boy as he cried himself to sleep. She stroked his hair and sang a lullaby her own mother had sung to her. Long ago, on a farm, on a distant world, tomorrow she would report for duty. Tomorrow she would receive new orders. Tomorrow she would begin training for revenge. But tonight, she was just a woman holding a broken child, mourning a broken world. Preparing for a future painted in blood, the galaxy had wanted peace. Humanity would give them something else entirely. 6 months passed after the massacre of New Busan to the rest of the galaxy. It seemed like humanity had accepted defeat. Human colonies went dark one by one. Communications stopped. Trade vessels disappeared. The great networks that had connected human worlds fell silent. The Velith watched with satisfaction. They believed the humans were dying. Falling apart from grief and despair, they were wrong. Deep in the Outer Rim, far from any Velith patrol routes, humanity was not dying. Humanity was transforming. Admiral Taekong had ordered complete communications blackout. No signals in or out. No transmissions that could be intercepted. Human ships traveled through hidden routes, using ancient asteroid paths and abandoned space lanes that no one had used for centuries. In the darkness, they built shipyards that had once made civilian transports now produced warships. Factories that had manufactured farming equipment now created weapons. Scientists who had studied medicine now designed tools of destruction. Every man, woman, and child who could work was working. They worked through the day and through the night. They worked until their hands bled and their eyes burned. They did not complain. They remembered New Busan. On the mobile research station Ghost Protocol, Dr. Yoonji Shin had not slept in 4 days. She was small and thin, with gray streaks in her black hair, despite being only 40 years old. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her hands shook from too much caffeine. But she could not stop. She was too close. The null field generator, a technology that could make ships invisible to all sensors. No radar could detect them. No scanner could find them. They would be ghosts, moving through space without a trace. "Run the test again," she ordered her team. A young technician named Zhu activated the prototype. The small drone in the center of the laboratory flickered and vanished. Not just from sight, but from every instrument in the room. Heat sensors showed nothing. Motion detectors showed nothing. Even the air pressure sensors could not tell that anything was there. Yunji let out a breath she had been holding for months. It works. It actually works. Her team cheered, but the celebration was short. There was no time for joy. They had to build more. They had to build hundreds. How long until we can fit these on warships? She asked. 3 months, Jiwoo said. Maybe 2 if we don't sleep, then we don't sleep. On a hidden training ground inside a hollowed-out moon, General Seo Kanam watched his soldiers drill. He was an old man with a weathered face and strong hands. He had fought in small conflicts throughout his career, but nothing like this. Nothing that mattered this much. 2 billion people had volunteered for military service after the massacre. 2 billion. More than humanity had ever armed in its entire history. They came from every corner of human space, teachers and farmers, artists and engineers, old veterans and young children barely old enough to hold a weapon. Seok Nam looked at their faces as they trained. He saw anger there and pain and something else. Something harder. Something that would not break. A young woman named Somi approached him. She was 18 years old, small and thin, with a bruise on her cheek from combat training. General, when do we fight? Soon, he said. Soon? I lost my whole family on New Busan, my parents, my little brother. He was only 5. Suk Gnome put a hand on her shoulder. I know, we all lost someone. That's why we train. That's why we prepare. So when the time comes, we'll be ready. Somi nodded and returned to her unit. Cox Nam watched her go. She would probably die in the coming war. Many of them would, but they had chosen this path willingly, with open eyes and burning hearts, far away at the Galactic Council. Ambassador Una Park continued to play her role. She appeared at meetings with slumped shoulders and tired eyes. She spoke in a defeated voice. She accepted insults and dismissals without complaint. The Velith High Speaker looked at her with contempt. Your species is breaking, he said one day. Your colonies are falling apart. Soon there will be nothing left. Una lowered her head. Yes, High Speaker. We are struggling. Many of our people have lost hope. As they should. Humanity should have accepted our guidance from the beginning. This tragedy could have been avoided. You're right, High Speaker. We were foolish to resist. The Velith smiled his cold smile and turned away. He did not notice the fire that flickered briefly in Yuna's eyes. He did not see her hands clench into fists beneath her robes. Every week, she sent coded messages to Earth, intelligence reports, Valith fleet movements, council discussions, every piece of information that could help humanity prepare for war. She was the perfect spy, hidden in plain sight, playing the role of a broken woman while plotting the destruction of an empire. On the Resolve, Admiral Tae Kung reviewed the progress reports. The fleet was growing. 100 ships had been equipped with nullfield generators. 200 more were under construction. The Voidlance production was ahead of schedule. Captain Hannah Yoon entered his office. She had been promoted to Commodore and given command of the Phantom Fleet, the invisible ships that would strike first. How are the crews? Tae Kong asked. Ready, sir? We've been running drills non-stop. Attack patterns, retreat routes, targeting protocols. They can operate in their sleep. They might have to. Anna nodded. She understood. The coming war would push them beyond all limits. I visited New Busan last month, she said quietly. What's left of it? I walked through the ruins of the capital city. There's nothing left, sir. Just ash and bones. Tae Kong was silent for a moment. I lost my family there. Oh no, sir. So did many of us. Does that make you afraid? Hannah shook her head. No, sir. It makes me ready. She left his office, and Tae Kong turned to his window. Outside, the stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere among them, the Velith were going about their daily lives. Believing themselves safe, believing humanity was no threat, they would learn the truth soon enough in his laboratory. Lieutenant Minho Beek completed the final tests on the 100th Voidlance. The weapon was terrifying in its simplicity. a focused beam that could penetrate any shield and destabilize the core of a planet. No defense could stop it. No armor could resist it. He had created something that could end worlds. The thought kept him awake at night. He wondered what his mother would think of him. She had raised him to be kind, to help others, to build things that made life better. Now he built things that brought death. But he remembered the footage from New Busan. He remembered the children screaming, the cities burning, the Velith commander laughing as he ordered more bombs to fall. If this was what it took to protect humanity, then he would do it. He would carry this weight for the rest of his life if he had to. On Earth. President Woojin Lee addressed his cabinet for the final time before the war began. His hair had turned completely white in the past 6 months. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were clear and steady. "In 3 days we will strike," he said. "Admiral Kang has prepared the battle plans. General Nam has trained the ground forces. Dr. Shin has given us invisible ships. Lieutenant Beak has given us weapons that can break worlds." He looked around the room at the faces of his ministers. Some were afraid. Some were eager. All of them understood what was coming. "We cannot lose this war," he continued. "If we fail, humanity ends. Not just as a power, but as a species. The Velith will not give us a second chance." He stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. History will judge us for what we're about to do. Perhaps they will call us heroes. Perhaps they will call us monsters. I don't know. But I know this: we will survive. Whatever it takes, we will survive. The cabinet members nodded. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others straightened their shoulders with determination. The silent buildup was complete. The war was about to begin. The first attack came without warning. 12 Velith supply stations across 3 different systems simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, filled with soldiers and supplies and bustling activity. The next moment, there was nothing. No debris, no distress signals, no survivors. Just empty space where stations used to be. Velith High Command received the reports with confusion. Equipment failures, they decided. Old stations falling apart. Nothing to worry about. They sent repair crews to investigate. The repair crews never arrived. Their ships vanished too. Then the listening posts went silent. Then the patrol fleets. Then entire colonies stopped responding to communications. Something was hunting them in the darkness of space, and they could not see it coming. Commodore Hannah Yoon stood on the bridge of her flagship. The ghost of New Busan around her. 99 other ships moved in perfect formation, invisible to every sensor in the galaxy. The nullfield generators hummed quietly, bending light and radiation around their hulls like water flowing around stones. "Target acquired," her tactical officer reported. "Velith, military base ahead. Estimated 2,000 personnel." Hannah nodded. "All ships. Attack pattern 3. Fire on my command." The Phantom Fleet emerged from invisibility like nightmares becoming real. 100 human warships appeared from nothing, their weapons already charging. The Velith base had no time to raise shields, no time to scramble fighters, no time to do anything but die. The battle lasted 47 seconds when it was over. Hannah's ships vanished again, leaving nothing but destruction behind. They did not stay to celebrate. They did not pause to rest. They had more targets to hit, more enemies to destroy. This was not a war of glory. This was a war of vengeance. On the Velith homeworld, the High Speaker received report after report of attacks. His crystal body pulsed with colors that showed his growing fear. How were the humans doing this? Where were they striking from? Why couldn't anyone see them coming? "Deploy the Grand Armada," he ordered. "All 8,000 ships. Find the human fleet and destroy it." The Grand Armada launched from 100 different ports. It was the largest military force the Velith had ever assembled. 8,000 warships, crewed by the finest soldiers in the Dominion. They spread across human space like a net, searching for any sign of the enemy. Admiral Tae Kong was waiting for them. He had positioned humanity's full fleet at the Coral Nebula, a massive cloud of gas and dust that blocked sensors and communications. It was the perfect place for an ambush. 4,000 human ships hid among the swirling colors. Their engines cold, their weapons ready, the Velith Armada entered the nebula from the eastern edge, scanning for targets. They found nothing. They pushed deeper, growing confident. The humans were hiding, they decided. Running scared, then Tai Kong gave the order. 4,000 ships lit up their engines simultaneously. They emerged from the nebula like a wave of fire, their weapons blazing. The Velith, caught by surprise, scrambled to respond. Their formations broke apart. Their commanders shouted conflicting orders. The battle lasted 11 hours. Tai Kong commanded from the Bridge of the Resolve, his voice calm and steady as he directed the fight. He had studied Velith tactics for decades. He knew their weaknesses, their patterns, their blind spots. He exploited every one. Human ships were smaller and faster than Velith cruisers. They darted between enemy formations, striking vulnerable points and retreating before counterattacks could land. They fought in perfect coordination, each ship supporting its neighbors, its captain trusting the overall plan. The Velith tried to overwhelm them with numbers. It did not work. For every human ship that fell, 10 Velith ships were destroyed. The crystal bodies of Velith soldiers floated through space, broken and lifeless. When the battle ended, the Grand Armada no longer existed. 8,000 ships reduced to scattered debris. Humanity had lost 600 ships, a painful number, but far less than anyone had expected. Tai Kong allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Signal Lieutenant Beak. Tell him it's time." On the weapons ship Righteous Fury, Minho Beak received the message. His hands were steady now. The trembling had stopped months ago, replaced by cold determination. He walked to the firing controls and entered his authorization codes. The Void Lance, powered up with a low hum that grew into a roar. Energy gathered at the tip of the massive weapon, swirling and condensing into a point of blinding light. The target was Crystalline Prime, the Velith Fortress world. 30 billion Velith lived there. It was the heart of their military power. It's a symbol of their dominance. Manash, 2 million humans dead. Children vaporized. Families erased. The Velith had shown no mercy then. He would show none now, Fiery said. The Void Lance discharged. A beam of pure destruction crossed the distance between ships and planet in an instant. It punched through the planetary shields like they were paper. It struck the surface and kept going, drilling down through rock and magma until it reached the core. Crystalline Prime's core destabilized. Earthquakes ripped across the surface. Volcanoes erupted everywhere at once. The planet's crust cracked and split apart. Billions of Velith died in minutes. Consumed by fire and chaos, Min watched on the view screen until there was nothing left to watch. Then he turned away and targeted the next world. The Galactic Council received news of the destruction with horror. The Velith representatives screamed for intervention. Other species demanded that humanity be stopped, punished. Destroyed. Ambassador Unipark stood before them all. Her defeated mask finally dropped. Her eyes blazed with a fire that made the other representatives step back. "You want to stop us?" she asked. "Then tell me, where was your outrage when our children burned? Where were your sanctions when New Busan screamed for help? You watched 2 million of our people die, and you called it peace. You blamed us for our own massacre. You chose your side when you chose silence." She spread her arms wide. "Now watch. Watch what happens to those who mistake our kindness for weakness. Watch what humanity becomes when pushed beyond all limits. This is your doing as much as theirs. Remember that." She walked out of the chamber. No one tried to stop her. On the Velith colony world of Shardfall, General Seok Nam led the ground invasion. Human soldiers descended from the sky in drop pods, landing amid enemy territory with weapons blazing. The Velith had never fought an enemy like this. Other species surrendered when outmatched. Other species retreated when bloodied. Other species calculated the cost and chose survival. Humans did not retreat. Humans did not surrender. Humans advanced until they won or they died. And even dying, they kept fighting. Kanam led from the front, his rifle never cooling. He was too old for this kind of combat, but he refused to send his soldiers anywhere he would not go himself. Around him, young men and women fought with terrifying ferocity. Somi was there. The girl who had lost her family on New Busan. She fought like a demon. Her face streaked with blood and dirt, her eyes empty of everything except rage. She took wounds that would have stopped anyone else. But she kept moving, kept shooting, kept killing. When Shardfall fell, the Velith survivors could only stare at their conquerors in disbelief. These were not the primitive weaklings they had been told about. These were something else entirely. Something that would not stop, could not be reasoned with, felt no fear. For the first time in their ancient history, the Velith knew what it meant to be prey. On the Resolve, Taekong received casualty reports. Thousands of humans had died in the fighting. Ships lost. Soldiers killed. Each number represented a person, a family, a story that had ended. His aide approached nervously. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Velith High Speaker. He wants to negotiate." Taekong did not respond immediately. He looked at the star map showing their progress. Velith space was burning. Their fleet was gone. Their fortress worlds were cracked and broken. "Tell him no," he finally said. "We'll talk when we're standing on his homeworld," the war continued. Humanity would not stop until the lesson was complete. The Velith homeworld was called Crystallis, and it was the most beautiful planet in the known galaxy. Towers of living crystal stretched toward the sky, catching sunlight and scattering it into endless rainbows. Gardens of glass flowers bloomed in every color imaginable. For 10,000 years, the Velith had ruled from this world, confident that no enemy would ever touch their sacred ground. Now, human ships filled the sky above it. Admiral Taekong stood on the bridge of the Resolve, looking down at the planet that had ordered the death of his family. His hands were clasped behind his back. His face showed no emotion. Inside, he felt only emptiness. "The planetary shields are down," his tactical officer reported. "Their remaining fleet has surrendered. The Velith High Council is requesting immediate talks." Taekong nodded slowly. "Tell them I'm coming down personally." The shuttle descended through the crystal towers of the capital city. Velith civilians watched from below, their bodies flickering with colors of fear and despair. Human soldiers had already secured the government district. They stood at attention as their admiral passed, their faces hard and proud. The Velith High Council waited in their grand chamber. 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in their crystal thrones, surrounded by the ruins of their empire. The High Speaker himself knelt at the center of the room, his one-browed body dim and cracked. Taekong walked to the center of the chamber and stopped. He looked at the High Speaker without speaking. "We surrender," the High Speaker whispered. "Unconditionally. Completely. We will accept any terms you offer. Any terms. Yes, please. Just stop. Let our people live." Taekong thought of his daughter Jisoo, who had wanted to be a doctor. He thought of his wife Mireille, who had loved gardening. He thought of his mother, Sunye, who had told him stories of old Korea before he fell asleep. They were all gone. They would never come back. No victory could change that. "The Velith Dominion is dissolved," he said finally. "Your military will be permanently reduced to defense forces only. Your weapons technology will be surrendered to human custody. Reparations will be paid to humanity for 1,000 years. The High Speaker's body dimmed even further. In our homeworld, our people will live. Humanity is not interested in genocide. We want something else." "What?" "Understanding." Kong's voice was quiet, but carried through the entire chamber. "You killed 2 million of our people because you thought we were weak. You thought we would break. You thought we would accept our place and bow our heads. You were wrong. Remember this day. Teach your children. Let this lesson echo through every generation that follows. Never again mistake human kindness for human weakness." He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the most powerful empire in the galaxy signed its own death warrant. The Treaty of Ashes was finalized 3 days later, signed on the ruins of the Velith Senate that human bombardment had destroyed. Representatives from every human colony watched as the High Speaker pressed his crystal hand to the document. Binding his species to 1,000 years of subjugation, Commodore Hanayun did not attend the ceremony. She had taken a small shuttle to New Busan instead. The planet was still dead. The atmosphere was toxic. The cities were ruins. But someone had built memorials there, 2 million names. Carved into walls of black stone that stretched to the horizon, Hannah walked among the names for hours. Her boots crunching on ash and bone. She did not cry. She had no tears left. She simply walked and read and remembered. Eventually, she found the names she was looking for. People she had known. Friends she had lost. Families she had failed to save. She knelt in the ash and stayed there, till the sun set over the dead world. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Una Park delivered humanity's final address. The chamber was silent. Representatives who had once dismissed her species now sat in fearful respect. "You called us young," she said. Her voice was steady and cold. "Primitive, insignificant. You said we spread too quickly, fought too easily. You watched our people die and called it justice?" She paused, letting her words sink in. "Now you have learned what we are. We are the species that remembers. The species that does not forgive. The species that, when pushed, pushes back until there is nothing left to push against." She looked at each representative in turn. "We did not want this war. We did not seek this blood. But we will never apologize for surviving, for protecting our people, for answering murder with justice." She straightened her shoulders. "The Galactic Council will be restructured. Humanity will take a permanent seat among the 12. New rules will be established, rules that protect the weak from the strong, that punish aggression, that ensure no species ever suffers what we suffered." She walked toward the exit, then stopped and looked back. One final thing. To any species watching this broadcast, to any civilization that might consider following the Velith path, remember what happened here. Remember what we did. Remember what we became. And understand that we will do it again if we must. Never again mistake our kindness for weakness. The chamber remained silent for a long time. Dr. Yoonji Shin published her research on the last day of the war. The null field generator. The void lance. Technologies that could reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy. She made it all freely available to every species, every world, every civilization that wanted it. Her colleagues thought she was crazy. "You're giving away our advantage," they protested. "You're making us vulnerable." Yoonji shook her head. Power imbalances created this tragedy. The strong attacked the weak because they could. Only equality can prevent the next war. She returned to her laboratory and began working on something new. Medical technology. Life-saving devices. Things that healed instead of destroyed. She had spent too long building weapons. She wanted to build something else now. General Seok Nam returned to Korea after the war ended. He went back to the small village where he had been born, a quiet place in the mountains where the air was clean and the nights were full of stars. He planted a cherry tree in his mother's garden. She had died years ago, before the war, but he remembered how much she loved the blossoms in spring. He spent his days tending the garden, walking in the mountains, sitting on his porch and watching the seasons change. He did not speak of the war. He did not give interviews or write memoirs. When visitors asked about his service, he simply smiled and offered them tea. Some wounds were too deep for words. Lieutenant Min Obik resigned his commission on the day the treaty was signed. He could not bear to look at his weapons anymore. He could not bear to remember what he had done with them. He moved to Mars and became a teacher at a small school in one of the newer colonies. He taught physics to children, showing them the beauty of the universe, the elegance of mathematics, the wonder of discovery. He never mentioned that he had once cracked worlds open. Sometimes, late at night, He stood at his window and looked at the stars. He wondered if the ghosts of Crystalline Prime were watching him. He wondered if they hated him. He wondered if he deserved their hatred. He never found answers to these questions. He simply lived with them, day after day, year after year, carrying his burden in silence. President Wu Jin-Lee retired shortly after the war ended. His final address to humanity was short and simple. "We did not choose this war," he said. "We did not want this blood on our hands. But when darkness came for us, we refused to die in the shadows. Let history judge our actions. Let the galaxy remember our answer. They demanded peace on their terms. We gave them peace on ours." He spent his remaining years in a small house by the ocean, reading books, walking on the beach, playing with his grandchildren. He died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 92, surrounded by family. The galaxy entered a new era. The Galactic Council, humbled and changed, established new laws protecting smaller species from larger ones. Humanity became a voice for the oppressed, advocating for those who could not advocate for themselves. Other species, those who had been bullied, threatened, exploited, looked to Earth with hope. If humanity could survive, so could they. If humanity could fight back, so could they. If humanity could win, maybe they could too. Years passed, decades, centuries. On the memorial world of New Busan, a little girl walked among the black stone walls, holding her grandfather's hand. She was maybe 7 years old, with curious eyes and endless questions. The old man was Admiral Tae Kong, retired now, his hair white and his step slow. He had returned to New Busan every year since the war ended. He always visited the same names. He always said the same prayers. "Grandfather?" the little girl asked. "Why do the aliens look at us with fear?" Tae Kong stopped walking. He knelt down to meet her eyes, his old bones creaking. Because once, long ago, they forgot something important. That even the smallest creature will fight when it has no other choice. And sometimes the smallest creatures have the sharpest teeth. Tae Kong smiled back. "Yes, little one. Exactly like that." He took her hand, and together, they walked into the sunset of a world reborn. Behind them, 2 million names carved in stone stood as eternal witnesses to humanity's darkest hour and its greatest victory. The stars stretched overhead, endless and infinite. Somewhere out there, civilizations rose and fell, empires waxed and waned, species fought and made peace. But one lesson remained, etched into the fabric of galactic history.